Well, welcome to this Capital Conversation with KELOLAND's Capital News Bureau correspondent Bob Mercer. I'm Mike O'Garen here at Sioux Falls in
Hey,
our
Michael.
studios. Hi, Bob. How are you? You're in the Senate chamber today, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's a fun place to
Fun,
be.
fun place to be. When I was out there with you last week, you and I worked out in the House chamber and just spent the day working there, which was kind of a neat place to set up shop.
Yeah, I try to work out of the two press boxes. It gives me access to the legislators, and I don't know, it works out well.
Yeah. So we are in the second week here of the session, and kind of the big news today, I think we could start with, is what happened to House Bill 1057. You kind of posted a story earlier today, but walk through what happened in today's committee meeting.
Well, the hearing went on well past 2 hours. The the two sides presented their cases, and seven of the 13 co-sponsors on the bill were on the committee. So it was somewhat a foregone conclusion that something was going to come out. The bill's lead sponsor, Fred Deutsch, he's a Republican from Florence, up by Watertown. He took the bill and amended it down in a number of ways. He changed it so that doctors would be subject to, or doctors and others would be subject to a first-class misdemeanor, which is up to a year in jail, county jail, versus class 4 felony penalty, which would be punished by up to 10 years in a state prison. So there was quite a reduction there. And Deutsch explained that by saying he thinks hospitals and providers will stop doing these even if they're threatened with a misdemeanor. And then the other major change he did was he changed the age. It was going to be under age 18, including for people who live away from their parents, and took it down to under 16, so it would affect a smaller group. And then he also made an amendment to take out nurses, anesthetists, and medical assistants.
Yeah.
So
Was that under pressure from groups like ACLU and I have on the screen here Sanford Health, South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, South Dakota Medical Association, South Dakota Retailer Association, and Sioux Falls Chamber, Lead South Dakota Human Rights Campaign all opposed the bill. So was it that pressure, that outside pressure, to cause him to make these changes?
no, I don't think it was. So what he said led him to do it was in talking with the legislators on the committee. This was the House State Affairs Committee. There's sort of the who's who, if you will, of the House in terms of powerful positions and so forth. And so he said that would help him. He discovered from their perspectives that would help him get the bill out of the committee. And so now it's headed to the floor. It has 35, or the original version of the bill had 35 House sponsors, including Deutsch. You need 36 to get out. So, he's probably well on his way. It's hard to say what will happen if and when it gets to the Senate, but we'll wait for it to get here.
The last time we had like a big transgender type bill come up, it was the bathroom bill. It ended up passing out of both chambers, and then Governor Dugard vetoed it. So, but we haven't really. I don't think this issue was anything related to this was addressed in last session that I recall. So we haven't really seen, or it hasn't gotten to Governor Noem's desk, an issue like this yet.
No, it hasn't. But what was interesting today is the head of the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, David Owen, got up and said basically that one of the reasons the chamber had decided to oppose it was because of the economic impact. And the House Speaker, Stephen Haugard, came back at Owen and said basically that, can you prove that it had a negative effect? And Haugard had some numbers out of North Carolina where a bathroom bill had been passed and then was repealed. But Haggard said the economy actually had grown in North Carolina. Owen's response to that was, well, you know, economies grow for many reasons.
Right.
So, so there wasn't definitive evidence there. But Haggard bringing that up, bringing that counter argument up, suggested that when it does get to the governor, if it gets there, but if it does get there, she might be receptive to signing it. She, she she's taken a different position than Governor Dugard has on other issues such as the firearms bills that Dugard had previously vetoed. She signed them last year into law. So if that's the example, um, we'll have to see. But that's the pattern so far.
Okay, well, we'll continue to watch that. That is heading now to the full house, correct? Just to.
Yeah, and technically it's scheduled for Friday afternoon, but the House or the legislature in general uh, tends to not meet on what we call getaway day.
Okay.
So, I mean, they come in and they get out quickly. And so I don't know that they'll take up something that big on Friday afternoon when they want to get home.
Right. Well, I've got our bill tracker up on here, and I think one of the other bills that you've been reporting on, we've been reporting on here as well from with Ray Yost, our digital data reporter, is the Missing Persons Clearinghouse bill. That is also headed to the chamber floor. Is that right?
Well, it was on the calendar for debate today. They delayed it. They didn't explain why. Um, a lobbyist who was not at the hearing asked after the hearing whether anybody had brought up how much it was going to cost the AG's office and whether there was an appropriation. And candidly, those questions never came up in that hearing. So that may be the reason.
I want to point out just quickly on this tracker that we have online, this section here on each of the bills is actually pulling in the latest information from the LRC, the Legislative Research Council, which is where you get a lot of your information from as well. But so as they make changes and they put things on there, so that having it removed from the calendar is right on here. But it allows people to go back and read more about it. Okay, let's talk about industrial hemp, another bill that we were expecting to see some movement on the bill because Governor Kristi Noem, in her State of the State address, had said that she was wanting to move forward with it in a few days as long as the lawmakers worked on her guardrails. And I've been looking, and I haven't seen any updates to the bill, and I haven't seen any amendments that match her guardrails at all. Have you? What are you hearing at all out there?
I'm not hearing anything about it at all. It was assigned to the Senate or to the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, and it has not been scheduled yet for a hearing there.
Okay. The other thing we were talking about this bill, it's a package of two bills that is happening related to smoking and vaping. Vaping has been, of course, a big issue on the national level. It was President Trump worked to get rid of a lot of the flavors of vaping, and then also the age to buy tobacco went up to 21 years old. State law doesn't say that right now, but there's two bills that kind of look at this. So can you walk us through each one? Let's start with House Bill 1063, which is the tobacco age one.
Yeah, the main thrust of that is it would raise the smoking age or the age that you could purchase it, tobacco at to age 21 from age 18. The other bill, the vaping bill, would do away with a lot of flavors as well on vaping products. What's not clear, and I haven't talked to the bill sponsor Carl Perry yet, but it appears to decouple vaping from tobacco. At the very end of the vaping bill, it says vaping products shall not be considered as tobacco products. And if that's the case, the 21 age for tobacco would not apply to vaping, and vaping would remain age 18 under that version of the bill.
Yeah, I'm pulling up here the bill right now. So you said it's towards the end is where it says that?
Yes, yeah. It might be the last section of the bill.
Okay.
It just says something's going to be repealed.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting to go through these bills and then see, and you the wording really matters too. When I was covering the execution this past year, there was one word and or in a law in South Dakota law that made all the difference, or could have made all the difference, depending on how the judge were to decide. And so it really goes to show that words really matter
oh
in
yeah, yeah.
legislation.
Well, and a lot of times people get hung up on, or laws get hung up on whether the law says may or shall. May is permissive and shall directs you to do it. So,
I don't know if you've noticed this. Something I've noticed when looking through the bills this year. A lot of the updates will change it from like a man to a man or woman, or he or she instead of he, because a lot of the laws that are on the books just say he, and it's
right.
just like those small changes are a lot what a lot of these bills are.
Yeah, they are. The bills we've seen so far are basically in three categories. There were the what I would describe as the interim legislative bills, which were produced by interim committees that the legislature assigned to work during the 9 months that the legislature was not in session. Um, Another group would be the what they call department bills or agency bills. Those come from state government agencies and departments, and many of those are cleanup, such as you described. And then now we're starting to see the third group of bills come in, which are individual legislators' bills uh, that have their own ideas in them, and just they tend to come in flurries, depending on legislators get their ideas done. And secondly, depending on how complex the ideas were when they were presented to the Legislative Research Council staff. A one page bill, of course, is a lot easier to rewrite than or to write than a complete rewrite of a 30 or 60 page section of code. So
Right. The I want to just point out on the bill tracker here we have, if you want to know more about vaping in particular, Kello did a 30-minute special report all about the vaping issue. So I put a link to that on here as well. But yeah,
sure.
there's just a lot of, I mean, yeah, the bills. There. Oh, I wanted to talk about this one, Senate Bill 51. This is the one about having concealed weapons in county courthouses. Has this been proposed before?
Yeah, it's been up a number of times, and it, I think that given what happened last year with the state capitol being able to carry guns in many parts of the state capitol now, uh, that this will now lead to courthouse county employees being allowed to carry in courthouses. There already were a number of exemptions for courthouses. Judges could carry, law enforcement could carry, um, if they chose. And I mean, there's even an exemption for hunter safety classes because they're often held in rural
Oh,
county courthouses.
yeah.
So, so, um, but having knowing that a county employee may have a weapon on her or his body, that may be a deterrent to people. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to pitch it, in committee, and so that we'll see what happens there.
Let's like pull big picture a little bit. We're only 2 weeks in, second week into the session. What are you? Uh, is it going as you've expected? Are there, what are you looking for moving into this next week?
Oh, the they'll continue to hold hearings on the various small bills that they have so far and on the interim bills. They'll clear those out of the respective chambers, and then they'll start digging into the individual legislators' bills. And there aren't many of those yet. The Senate is up in the 60s, and I forget the number of House bills there are, but they're not to 100 yet either. So, um, there's a lot of bills yet to come in if this is a normal year.
Right. Yeah. You have to. I wonder. Just getting from your experience covering it, when I go through the bills, I find that it's really hard sometimes to tell exactly what the bill is trying to do. Like you can be reading it, you can read the description that they put in, then you read the bill, and you're trying to figure out is this something? Is this newsworthy, or is this you know, just run of the mill little changes like we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I picked this up from a book I read a long, long time ago, 30 years ago, written by Robert Caro, and in the book was the biography of Robert Moses, and Moses essentially built New York City, and had immense power. And one of the things that came through in the book was that when he was a legislator, uh, he would use the bills so that one bill would amend another bill, and so that you had to read all of his bills to figure out what he was really doing. And out of that, I developed this rule for myself that I need to read every bill. And so even if it's a trust bill that's dozens of pages long, um, or an insurance bill, I read them. And it gets kind of boring sometimes, but sometimes you find great things in
There's
there too.
a little hidden nugget that's a big news
Yeah,
story that's one line, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, is there anything else that our viewers, people watching on here, should know right now, or just
Appropriations is holding its hearings on the budget, and they'll have the Department of Education in tomorrow, Wednesday. Um, so that'll be interesting to see what goes on there.
right? Because
As,
originally it was forecasted the government was not going to have as much money. No one was making cuts, and then that cartoon kind of changed a little bit during the State of the State address.
yeah, and the thing there is, I could see the lobbyists for the different education groups, the Associated School Boards, the school administrators, the South Dakota Education Association, which represents classroom teachers. I could see their lobbyists working the halls today ahead of the hearing, and so I think there will be uh, some kind of action there tomorrow. They the Appropriations Committee, the Joint Appropriations Committee, they have 18 members, 9 from the House, 9 from the Senate, and they you never know what they're really going to do until you get to the end of session, because they won't know until February how much money they think they're going to have for the rest of this fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And then they'll also have a better idea, a better projection, or at least another month or two of numbers of sales tax and other revenue numbers to use for a forecast for the coming fiscal year. And that's always one of the difficulties here, is that they're budgeting essentially 16, 18 months into the future. And so it's hard for them to predict. And so in some ways, the fact that they come as close as they do, um, you know, it's kind of a compliment to them in a way. So
The last thing I have to ask you about
yeah.
is when I was out there, you identified a little typo on the sign going in for security, which caused a crisis in the Capitol. But so have they fixed the typo on the sign?
Oh yeah, yeah. And when I stopped, I had not seen the signs before. They just to backtrack a second. They started the Capitol security system at the north entrance a week ago on Monday, and so Tuesday was the first day that I went through it, and so when I went back out during the day, I thought, I need to look at these signs, and because they had not been up on Monday, and so when I went out to see them, I took a picture and with my cell phone. So then later I came in and I looked at it and I went, holy cow! They don't even say these
What?
various items are prohibited.
Right.
And then an alert. So I posted that on, tweeted it out on, and and it got a huge response. And then others noticed some of the typos, which, I mean, a former legislator in Rapid City, Scott Acarius, was the first one to point out that that there was a mistake in a sentence, and so they were down within hours,
Oh yeah.
and then there were new signs put back up by the next day.
Well,
So
it was amusing because I was with Kelly Lance, Kelly Volk, and we both came out there to cover it. And while we were going through the security entrance, the person who's in charge of the signs came in and said, "I heard the media heard about there's a typo on the sign," and so we thought, "There's Bob's tweet."
yeah, yeah.
So, well,
So
you made your
it's
mark there, I guess.
well, they still have some things to iron out. I came up here this week, Monday night, for an executive board meeting that was on the legislative schedule and on their website, and there was no security. I mean, there was no one working the security desk, and so I came into the building, illegally, I guess, with a legislator, and went to the meeting, and then that another a legislative employee told me that when that person came in, there was no one at the security desk, and that was at about 6 o'clock, and I came in at about 6:40 or 6:45. So, and there was also a wrinkle last week where they came in and shut the lights off on me I was working in the House chamber, and they shut the lights off at just before 7 o'clock, and I had to yell, "Hey!"
I'm here.
So anyway,
They're still working out some kinks with this new
yeah,
system, and
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because we were both there, and you were there much later than we were last week, and you were there pretty late, so you're there at all times of the day. So if people want to see your stuff, of course, you can always go to the Capitol News Bureau page on KELOLAND.com. This is a look at it. And if you're hearing noise in the background, that's because Bob is in the Senate chamber, and there are some lawmakers, I assume, over there. So anyway, join us. We're going to try to do this, make this a more frequent thing so that we can talk about what's happening in here. And so join us hopefully next week for this. And you're looking, this is a view of the Capitol right now where Bob is at in the Senate chamber. Bob, thank you so much for joining in today.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
See ya.